Hey, what's up everybody? Welcome back to the Rules of Engagement. Before I jump into our second segment, I remind you guys, if you miss any of these episodes of Rules of Engagement, they're on, Monday through Thursday, pretty much every day after whatever coverage we have. If you miss any of the WCS coverage, any of our MLG coverage, go ahead and check out youtube.com/official MLGSC2. Every piece of content we have there is for free in 1080p quality on the YouTube page. Additionally, comments to the days, play of the days, all the cool additional little short YouTube videos you can watch in an ad break or whatever. A lot of awesome content. Go and check it out. Again, youtube.com/official MLGSC2. Our second segment's going to be on Game 2 between Sage and Oz from Monday's Challenger Group Stage. And it's going to be on PvP maneuvering. Last time we talked about the engagements, this game we'll talk about how maneuvering is so important in PvP. Talk about a trick PvP opener, then the importance of vision, and then the importance of buildings in the Protoss vs. Protoss engagements. So we'll start this one off at the 4-minute mark. And we're going to look at the build Sage is doing. So one cool thing about what Sage is doing, notice how his third pylon, he has one pylon here that powers his first couple buildings. First pylon is always going to be close to the mineral line, so you lose a minimal amount of minerals building the pylon and sending the probe back to mine. Second pylon is going to be out here. That's just a catch. Oh, is he sending a Phoenix in from this angle, an Oracle in from this angle, or Prism in from this angle? It's a scouting pylon at the edge of his base. Third pylon, this is unusual placement behind a natural. And what's cool about this is because if you think about PvP, people will probe scout early. As soon as you get your first stalker out, the probe scout is done because the stalker can kill it, right? What's the next level of scouting in PvP? It's going to be an observer. It's going to be a hallucinated Phoenix. It's going to be a real Phoenix. Or it's going to be gateway pressure. One of those four things. How does the hallucinated Phoenix go? It goes from the main, right? It'll be made, it'll go right into the main of the opponent. And this is what it'll see. Same thing with an observer. Same with the real Phoenix. Gateway pressure. How does gateway pressure go? Well, we're seeing it right now. Oz. Right now, pressuring his opponent. Up to the front, right? Is he going to send units to the back to natural? No, he's not. He's going to check if there's a nexus there, but he's not going to check it right back to natural. So it's really tricky, a cool thing to hide some tech buildings in the back here natural for two reasons. One, it's unlikely to be scouted. Two, in the mid game, if the game extends, you're going to be having an expansion, you're going to defend this location anyway. If you're proxying around a corner, yes, it's also unlikely to be scouted, but in the mid game, it's still vulnerable. If you proxy behind your natural, it's safe in the mid game, so it's pretty cool here. Now, the one disadvantage is the Stalker doesn't cut off this this Mothership core and force it out of the base. And that was a pretty big mistake, Sage. He was so caught up with trying to deflect the frontal attack and micro in there that he mismoved his Stalker a bit. And he didn't catch the Mothership core until to the top right. And now this Mothership core, of course, is going to end up heading down. And it's going to spot this Dark Shrine in a very unfortunate manner. And now Sage is in a very rough spot because Oz knows exactly what's going on. Oz, in fact, even catches two more Stalkers here, gets a nice advantage. He's going to go ahead and try the main. A great warping of his sentry so he doesn't die here. Super, super important to not die. And then when Oz comes up with an overcharge, he's going to force him back again. But all these villains are now forfeit because they were scouted. This is not something Oz would normally check for, but the Mothership core was able to scout it. But most games this won't happen. So the hiding spot was very good. Just kind of unfortunate the way the game went out, and it also was a little bit of a mistake in not keeping that Mothership core to the left of the main. The Stalker was right here, and the Mothership core is coming in from this way. It couldn't have actually got across the top. So, anyways, we're in a situation where Oz has a little bit of advantage. Economically, right now both players have even worker count, but Oz has a bigger army, and he's starting Nexus, which means that he can go ahead and play super greedy. Because he knows he has a big Stalker count, he has detection to stop DTs from killing him. He's in pretty good shape right now as far as just the overall size of his army goes. One tricky part, though. He wants to use this army to try to punish Sage. If he can kill Sage's expansion cancel, he'll be way ahead in economy. Unfortunately, you have to be very careful here. Notice how careful the micro is in this situation. I'm going to play in slow speed. Because if he goes up too far, where there's a smaller area, if he gets these Stalkers force filled in half, right? Right now he has 7 Stalkers. 7 Stalkers versus this army, they could focus them more down quickly, and then micro against the rest. But if they press too far forward, if they got caught off guard, if let's say 4 of those Stalkers got cut up by force fields, so the 3 were stuck behind, the 4 Stalkers with this much damage output, could not kill the Immortal. They would all die to the Zealot Sentry Mortal Force. 3 Stalkers behind would look kind of silly watching your buddies die. So that's why Oz, of course, even though he had an army advantage, had to back away. Because in a straight-up engagement, Stalkers are generally inferior to pretty much every unit in the game, unless you have Blink and can micro insanely well. So that's why, of course, he's backing away. He still has a slide advantage, though. It's not the end of the world, but he has a slide advantage. Right now, he's got a worker advantage because while he was pressuring Sage, Sage felt compelled to warp in extra defenders. Oz could feel free to crank out probes that get lane next. So a little bit of economic advantage, not the hugest deal. I want to talk about, though, the importance of vision in PvP. So you fast forward through this, both players are going to macro up. Both players are going to say, okay, you know what? I think it's time to go ahead and maybe think about taking that third base. All right, so you can see here, Sage taking a third base over here. In fact, by the way, here's a DT getting a lot of kills here. Sage was kind of threatening a frontal attack. Really cool little side move here by the one DT getting a lot of kills. And that's going to put Sage back in roughly an equal position to the game. But not that important of something to harp on, because it's just he was able to very cleverly sneak a DT in, but that's not something that's easy to emulate, so I'm not going to focus on that. So back in the game anyways, we're going to see Sage, of course, takes third base. Now we're in a situation where look at what Oz has done. Oz has split his army in half. He's got half his army. He realizes his opponent has a third base. He realizes he has a little bit of maybe an army advantage, maybe not, but he feels he has to do something to kill a third base, and this is where vision is so important. Because if we talk about what Sage's vision is right now, right? This is his vision. So if we jump into this and reflect it as far as the full map goes, what does Sage see? Sage knows a couple things. He knows he has a base down here, he has a base up here, and he has a base up here. He has an army right here. That's his army. And his vision is literally this. His vision extends basically just what his army and bases see. That's it. He sees nothing else. Now, where does Oz have his army positioned? What Oz has, this is really cool here, Oz has the Watchtower, right? And he has a couple Zealots down here. Those are the things he has. Now, what's Oz's vision? I mean, beyond what he has back here, the important vision on the attack, he has this vision. And what are the 2 routes that are important here? This route to the natural, this route to the third. Now, of course, it could be War Prisms, and that's an additional complexity. But in this case, in this circumstance, we don't have to worry about that. These 2 routes are ones to think about. Now, Sage, the red defender, he's in a situation where he has to consider 2 things. One, if he defends well, he's going to be ahead because his third base is faster. But if he gets stuck with half an army fighting a full army, the armies are so small right now that even half an army, even on a ramp, it might get overrun. He might lose his army, get slaughtered if he tries to fight the full army. So he has to keep his army together. And then 2, he has to cover both these spots. But how does he know which spot Oz is going to attack from, right? Sage can't tell that. He can't tell which spot Oz is going to attack from. So he has to pick the most important one, that being a natural. Natural is more important than a third base at this point because it controls movement into the main. The main's where an important tech units, the Immortals, the Colossus, and the Void Rays rally out from. So he has to keep his army there, and Oz knows this, so that leaves a vulnerability at this third base. And that's how important map vision is. If you had an observer out there, a single observer in this zone would solve all Sage's problems because he can know, oh, my opponent's going to send these Zealots over here. I need to warp in my own Zealots. I need to send a Militia Corps back. I need to do something, right? But in PvP, it's so hard to send your observer out because if their observer sees it, they're going to kill it. So the other alternative is just send a probe or a Zealot every once in a while to build a pylon out here. Build something out there to give you that extra vision. Keep your Mothership Core in this zone so we can see what's going on. There's a couple little tidbits, but as far as it goes, map vision, if we look at this, let me pause this. From Sage's viewpoint, my opponent's army is out here. I want to play defensive, but all of a sudden I see Zealots are here. It's too late to save the third. The third's dead, right? 5 Zealots here already. I can't warp in units. Army's too far away. Third base is dead. The best I can do is try to segment off some of his army and get a couple of free unit kills. He's going to go ahead and get a couple of free unit kills. By the time he gets back, of course, this Nexus is going to die, and Nas is going to escape. That's how important map vision is in this game. It's super, super, super important. So now, of course, that's not one important thing is if you kill your opponent's third base doesn't mean you win the game, right? Yeah, basically, I mean, I think it's a 400 mineral loss. A 400 mineral loss in a game with this much economy, with these big army sizes, is not a game-ending move. And it's especially not a game-ending move when your third base is not even done. So all Oz did there was he kind of equalized things, right? Now Sage is going to go on a counterattack. He's trying to do some more Prism Rast there, but Oz defends it super, super well, and that's going to put Sage in a little bit of an uncomfortable position. But again, now we're in the same situation. What's Oz's map vision at this point? Warp Prism drew him back, so he didn't have his Watchtower. His vision, again, is the same. Just where his army is. He has no vision over this zone, attacking a third, or this zone attacking natural. And in PvP, it's very, very difficult to get that vision, because observers are going to be killed if you send them out, because their opponent has an observer with their army, most likely. So Oz is kind of hanging out in the middle ground, right? He's like, wherever should I hang out? Let's hang out in the middle ground so we defend both bases. Now let's take the third. I think my opponent's there. Okay, he's there. We'll hang out here. Let's send one unit out to the natural to make sure I don't give too much position. Hold the Watchtower, guard the third. All right, another War Prism is going to be annoying, but he's going to defend that very well again with some Stalkers. Now his opponent moves down and gets rid of his Watchtower control. So he has to move back. He has to worry about that attack up his natural. He has to move back to defend that, right? There he goes. Back to defend it. And now what happens? Oh, he's worried about to go back to third. He's still in the dark. It's very scared. He keeps sending Zealots out. But now all of a sudden, he's in a situation where he's in between the bases. He got semi-juked. And that's where all of a sudden the third is vulnerable, right? So Oz can go ahead. Time warp. Remember I talked about this on Belcher. You time warp so you get the position. But in this circumstance, Sage doesn't have to even get the position. He just has to kill the Nexus, recall out. And now Sage is ahead because his third is done. So both players are taking turns kind of killing each other's third by outmaneuvering your opponents. And that's exactly what you can do. You see how both players do it in this game. If you do it in your game and your opponent doesn't respond in kind, you're just going to be way ahead. So it's a very, very cool tip and trick to try to outmaneuver your opponent by abusing their lack of map vision, attacking wherever their army isn't ready to defend it. Now we're just going to fast forward through a bit. Another little bit of a juke there. He's going to go ahead and try to work down this Nexus. He eventually gets it. The same type of thing. Map vision is so important in PvP. But the last thing I want to talk about on this replay is going to be the importance of buildings, right? So notice, we'll let this battle play out a little bit longer. Sage again on the counterattack. Notice how the buildings play a role in multiple aspects, right? There's two key things here that buildings are very important in. Oops. The first key aspect is going to be this. For the defender, for Oz, his units get stuck going through two channel pathways, right? Those two red lines I drew, that's where his units have to go through. Whereas the opponent has a great spread, right? Look at the spread of Sage's army. Boom, right there. He has a great spread. All the units are in the action. Whereas Oz has the units have stuck behind the Nexus and so forth and so on. So buildings can work against the defender if the range is played very well by the attacker. Now, what's the disadvantage? This is a disadvantage. We're going to watch it as the battle goes forward. Oz realizes what's happening here in the battle for Oz. He realizes, okay, my army is not doing so hot. My opponent has a better spread, a better concave. Even his army value is up of mine. Is not the best position, right? So what does he have to do? Notice this. As he runs out of units, he simply just stays behind a Nexus. Now, early on, what happened, right? We'll pause this again, actually, right here. Early on, what happened? Notice where these red lines are. Every single of his Zealots and Archons that were on those red lines or in front got annihilated because of the greater concave of Sage. But notice now in the battle, now his units are all back here. Right, let me redraw these. The red units are all basically back here behind a Nexus. So when these Colossi try to attack, a lot of these Colossi are busy. Well, yes, they still have the great concave over here. A lot of them are attacking the Nexus, right? And when they're attacking the Nexus, they're not attacking the important units. And that's how the buildings can work for the defender. The buildings can work against the defender in PvP because they force units to go through this choke pass. They can work for the defender because if you hide behind him, and you have greater range than some of your opponent's units. These units right here, they don't have the same range of the Colossi. They can't sit back. They have to go forward. So all the defending Colossi can shoot these units right here in this zone, while the attacking Colossi are just shooting that Nexus, right? That's how buildings can be super important for the defender. And of course, Sage, being a world-class professional, as you get back in the game, we can see, is of course going to realize this is happening, right? He's realizing a lot of his calls are shooting at buildings while the Immortals and Archons are getting killed. He's going to back away. Yes, he's way ahead, but the advantage of buildings can be so strong he has to back away. And we're just going to fast forward to the next engagement. As we can see here, he's going to try to exploit this again. And once he has more Colossi, more units, he's going to try to take another engagement and say, you know what? Maybe your buildings can work against you, but another time warp, I can focus down this Nexus and try to get out of here, right? And as soon as his opponent pushes past the Nexus, of course, it's an even battle. He's going to push forward here. With the superior units, this time he's stutter stepping in, so he doesn't shoot the Nexus. Tempest is going to be huge, it's going to force him back, but as he gets more units, he's going to go ahead. One more engagement here. He does have the army advantage. Go ahead and kill the Nexus, and he recalls out. And then now from here on, income, he's over twice the economy because both players have no main. So it's 2 bases to 1 base in mining. Army sizes being even favored for Sage. He's going to go ahead and win this pretty easily from here on out. So a couple recaps on this quick game is number one, map vision, super important in PvP. Always keep track of your opponent's army. Number 2, know how buildings help you. As the attacker, if you can get so your opponent has to walk between your buildings to approach your army, and you're attacking him while doing so, that's your advantage. As a defender, if you can get your opponent to have some of their units attacking your buildings during the battle, that's your advantage. So use the buildings to your advantage into battles. We saw there in the last engagement how Sage tried to kite back to force Oz to come outside the Nexus to fight him. That's exactly what he was doing. He didn't want to have his units attack the buildings. Or when Oz only had a few Colossi, he moved his Colossi into extra range to make sure they would all attack his opposing units instead of the Nexus. So try to micro around buildings. Try to understand how they affect the battle. You're going to end up doing much better in any engagement around an opponent's base or around your own base. This wraps up our second segment. We'll take a short break. Be on our third segment, a game between Sen and Oz.